Hi, it's Anne here, and today's video is my last video for my Pan That Palette project for 2022. This has been a pretty big project, actually outside of the panning portion, going through all of my palettes this year, and yeah, we're at the end. We've finished the project. So how I'll do this video is I will talk about the panning portion first, then I will talk about the palettes that I've used over the last month, and then I'll do like a summary at the end of kind of how this project went. Stay tuned for the introduction for my Pan That palette for next year. That's going to be a separate video. The eyeshadow palette that I've been working on this year is the Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette, the OG. Well, this isn't quite the OG. I know there's a version slightly older than this one, but this is fairly OG. I've had this for a while. No new pan. This is where we're ending up. Definitely focused on this side of the palette more so than this side of the palette. Didn't quite finish. I was hoping I'd finish this shade right here, Marzipan. That is my favorite shade in this palette, but didn't quite finish it. I really have been leaning into like cool tones over the past month, and I am actually wearing this palette today. You can get one cool tone look out of it using the Champagne Truffle shade on the lid, Candied Violet in the outer corner, and then Milk Chocolate right here as the transition shade. It works out pretty well. I wore that a couple times this month. I was like, oh, I can get a cool tone look out of this palette. So yeah, I mean, I'm not super disappointed. I am happy that I hit pan on what I hit pan. I knew this was going to be a hard palette to use, so we did okay. I did talk about, I think mid-year, I was like, okay, I'm going to be ready to declutter this. No, I'm keeping this. I may reintroduce it as a panning palette in the future, focusing on like this side. I also may depot this particular shade. I was gonna do that like right after this video, but I'm not gonna do that just yet, but I probably will depot that shade. So I didn't weigh this frequently throughout the year because it was too heavy for my jewelry scale, but I did weigh it at the beginning. I weighed it mid-year, and I've weighed it at the end. So at the beginning of the year, it was 209 grams. In June, it was 207 grams. And now in December, it is 205 grams. So a nice even spread throughout the year. That was 4 grams in total that I used out of this palette, which actually is better than last year. I think I only used about 2 grams last year. I did look it up. But yeah, I did use more out of this palette, even if visually it wasn't as satisfying. So I'll put up some photos of this palette. I think I'll show some photos from the beginning to like the end. Progress very slow, not maybe super satisfying from a panning perspective, but I'm happy that I really got to use that palette, that I have a real good feel for it, that I know what shades I like, what I can expect out of that palette, and it's like, there's a reason why that palette was like an OG palette, why it was a favorite, because I think the fact that that palette is older and the quality I think is still pretty darn good just kind of shows that, yeah, it was a really good palette. Like, I totally get why people were all over that palette. And for the face palette, I was using the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Edit Volume 4. Again, not visually, not going to be super exciting. I think the shade in the middle, this sort of yellowish shade, is showing pan, and I don't think that had pan before. So you can kind of see there's a bit of pan on the inner corner there, or inner side. Again, when I started this, I thought I was gonna use more of this than what I did. These powders are very fine, and I'm pretty light-handed with my makeup, so I feel like that's probably why this I mean, I didn't go through this quite as much as I thought I would. Again, I'm not mad though. Like, I'm not decluttering this palette. I'm not mad. I like this palette. I think it's for me, it's a really good travel palette. I would say the thing that I don't like about this is the highlighter. I think this palette would be way more useful if I liked that highlighter a little bit better. But otherwise, I do really enjoy this palette. I'm glad I have it. Eventually, when I probably finish, like, I would say once I finish these 2 shades and the bronzer, then I would consider buying another one of these palettes. I'd like to buy, I've seen like the trios. I've seen people have the trios, but I don't think I've ever seen them in store where it's like the highlighter, blush, and bronzer. To me, that's way more practical than having the 6 shades that I don't necessarily need. So I have been weighing this one throughout the year because it's light enough for my jewelry scale. So we started at 137.79 grams. Last month it was 134.7 grams. It is now finishing at 134.36. So that's a difference of 0.34 grams for this past month, or in total 3.43 grams. Again, maybe not a whole lot, but definitely better than my face palette last year. I definitely used more product than I did in my face palette last year. So yeah, overall I'm happy with the progress that I made on these 2 palettes. I do find Pan That palette is maybe not the project for me. It's funny, I watched Rebecca from formerly Panning and stuff, and she's very like diligent on like 1 palette at a time. I can't do that. I watch like Danny. Danny goes through so many eyeshadows and she does these beautiful looks. I just don't use as much eyeshadow. I've seen some people talk about like doing a palette, like a pan those shadows so you have it in different palettes. I was watching Emily and Max and she kind of talked about how that's, you know, good but not good. Like it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too. It's hard to pan stuff but then use your collection. So trying to find that happy balance is really, really difficult for me. So that's why this type of like the panning part of this project, a little difficult, and I'm gonna mix it up ever so slightly for next year and we'll see how that goes. Like, am I happy that I did work on that palette and did make some progress on it? Sure, but you know, I don't necessarily feel like I need to finish a palette now. Like, I feel like I've explored that side of me and I'm like, okay, I don't really need to finish palette. I don't mind like hitting pan or like finishing an eyeshadow, but it's not really something I feel like I must do, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'll throw up some pictures of the Hourglass palette if I haven't already, to sort of show the progress of that one. And again, I think from the side, this is a palette that, like, you see the difference when you look at it from the side compared to the top, because, yeah, like, visually from the top, it doesn't look a whole lot different. So that's the panning part. Now let's talk about the palettes that I was using this past month. So first off, we'll talk about this guy. This is the multi-cube from the brand I'm Meme, and it's in the shade 01 Sweet Pink. It's got 4 eyeshadows, and then underneath is a blush. I love this packaging. Like, I would love to have more of these, or more of this style, please. Maybe in different colors, though. I feel like this color story, maybe a little bit ho-hum. It actually reminds me of like a Charlotte Tilbury quad, where you kind of just get like a very, very subtle kind of look. I mean, it's pretty. The only thing too that I find with this eyeshadow is it always turns out a little warmer than I want it to, because it's very pink packaging, and I kind of want it to be more cool tone pink. but it doesn't quite work out like that. But yeah, it's pretty, it's nice, I like it. Good for travel if I wanted it for like a little weekend getaway. Again, another palette that leans maybe a little too warm for my liking is, oh, that's the back of it, the City Mini palette from Maybelline, and this is in the shade 510 Blushed Avenue. It also has like a lot of similar shades. I feel like, you know, you've only got, what, 6 shades in here? You could have diversified it up a little bit more. I really like that purple though. This purple, although I think the picture I took, or the one look I took, I might have used a little bit of it, but just like using that purple with like a pink, like champagne truffle, really, really looks pretty. Like basically I'm keeping this for that one shade. The other shades are okay. Again, a good little palette if you just want a quick look to throw together. Again, leans a little warmer than I would like it. And I just don't like, yeah, there's not a bright enough shade in this for me. And I'm kind of disappointed that these two shades are very, very similar. Not a great palette, but not a bad palette. I could see myself decluttering this in the future, like depotting maybe that purple and maybe one of the pinks and call it a day. But yeah, or like even, I mean, this is a good like all over setting shade that I could maybe finish up, but definitely not like, I wouldn't recommend this. Like, I'm not saying like, go run out and buy this. It was okay, but there's better stuff out there. So this palette, the Smashbox Petal Metal palette, this is the Cover Shot palette. I had one other one of these in a glitter thing and it just was, it dried right out. It was terrible. Again, another palette that maybe leans warmer than I want it to. Even this side, which you would think is cooler. I think it's like right now though, like I'm really into just cool tones right now. I just want the cool tone eyeshadows. And this one even still runs a little bit warmer than what I would like. But I really like the quality of this. Again, this kind of is maybe lacking. Like I know that there's these 2 mattes in there, but they're not quite right. I almost need like something in between there, like a neutral brown that's in between. This kind of leans a little warm, and obviously this is like an outer corner deepening. I want like a mid-tone neutral brown to throw in here, and maybe like a deeper purple. Like I have a deeper purple in my Paris Edit. It's either the Paris Edit or the other Vizier palette I had that would like pair with this well. I like the quality of this palette. I like this palette. I wouldn't declutter this. The only way I would declutter this is if it went off, if I felt like the quality was not good anymore. But I do quite enjoy this palette. I feel like most people I see like declutter these. I feel like this one in particular was different than the other ones. So I think this one, not this particular one, but they did have a version of this that was in collaboration with someone called Vlada, I think. I think she did like lip stuff. Because I had the lip things too. But yeah, like I think this particular one is a good shadow, good palette, and has good qualities to it. I like that one. I forgot to move over, so if I had pictures like wherever, I had pictures wherever. So the next palette I want to talk about is this one, the Too Faced White Peach palette. Again, I kind of talked about like this is seasonally, doesn't feel like me right now. Very sort of warm toned. However, I did a video where I used this shade, no, this one right here, and it turned out really, really pretty. And then I was using Sweet Fig, and Peach Ice, and a little bit of Fuzzy, I think, too, and On the Grill. So the On the Grill shade's actually really handy because it's like black, but it's not black. So it's good for deepening, but not like too dark. And it's like obviously the cooler toned. So yeah, I was able to make some like really cool toned looks out of this. Again, just with those colors, but it was nice to be able to figure that out because I was, pleasantly surprised that I could do that. I did try and do like a super boring look with just the mattes, and I hated it. I did not like the way that looked at all. I mean, it was fine, but I'm not like an all matte person. I feel like I need a little zhuzh, a little something to give the eyes something. Because I feel like when it's all flat, all matte, it doesn't suit me. But yeah, so that was kind of nice. I mean, maybe not the best time of year to use this because I feel like I didn't really get around to using some of these warmer shades in here. But still a nice palette, and it smells so nice. It smells so good. I talked about in my last video that I wasn't sure I was even going to get around to using this one because there were some palettes that I just like had to like not use, and this one I'm like, you know what, I'm going to try and get it in there, and I did. Again, was feeling the cool tone vibes, and this actually is quite cool toned. It has some warmth in it too, but it is pretty cool tone, and I actually ended up wearing this one a few times this past month. I think I only took one photo of a look with this. But I enjoyed playing with this one. Like, this is a nice everyday kind of, I don't have to think too hard kind of palette. I think I did wear this to work one time too, because it was like, yep, I could just throw this on. Kind of annoyed that this one shade was broken, but it's never really repressed properly since then. But yeah, nice little palette. I have this like in spades, as they say, because I do have this in like that CoverGirl one, that's the Petal something or other, or Roses one. It's the same color story, and that Rosewater one from e.l.f. is the same color story, although this obviously has more variety. So like if I had to choose, I would definitely get rid of the e.l.f. Bite Size and keep this, because this is still a pretty small, compact palette. This guy's new to me. This is the Too Faced Born This Way Natural Nudes palette. Bought this on sale. Did I need to buy this now that I've used it? No, no. Kind of redundant to a lot of other stuff that I have, and it isn't as super fancy special as everybody makes it seem like it is. It's a nice palette. If you can get it on sale and you want it, go nuts. But if you don't have it, don't feel like you're missing out, because you probably have stuff that's very similar if you have a larger collection. I really like the shades. The only shades that I didn't use these two. Obviously the warmer. I think I used a little bit of this shade. But yeah, I feel like I'm looking at my computer and I only have two looks. One was like a basic look with like some of these lighter tones, and then one was definitely a look with some of these sort of deeper tones over here. I thought I had a picture or a look with the pinker tones, like these ones in the middle. If I have that, I'll put that up. But yeah, like I did like playing with this. It's a good everyday palette. I feel like it's easy to throw on, easy to use every day, and you don't have to think too hard about it. But was I like blown away? Maybe not. Really like this pink, these two pink shades here, and really like these shades over here, like this one. Even this shade's quite nice too, like the shimmer shade. Like good quality palette. But if I could go back in time, you know, I'd probably still buy it anyway. But now that I know what I know, I don't feel quite as like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's a fine palette, not nearly as like mind-blowing as I was expecting, because it was so hyped up. But like I said, it's good. It's just not maybe like I feel like when I was using like the BH Cosmetics palettes, like the Lost in Los Angeles, I was blown away. I was like, this is so good. Maybe again because it was the price, because they were so cheap, and the quality for price. I don't know. But again, I got this on sale, so it was definitely much cheaper. But yeah, I was just like, oh, it's nice. Like that's just like, it's nice. Kind of glad it wasn't like a gift or anything, because I'd be like, it's nice, thanks. It's a gift to myself. So am I glad I have it? Yes. Did I need it? No. And what I think really spoiled that palette for me is this guy. Another Too Faced palette. So the Too Faced Natural Lust palette. I really like this palette. Like, really like this palette. Again, lots of cool tone looks I could get. So I was pairing some of these shades with that Sweet Fig shade in the, what do you call it, the White Peach palette. So that Sweet Fig kind of gave me that gray tone that I was looking for, like the gray tone transition that I would mix with these. So I wore this palette a lot. I only did one really out of the box look. I'm kind of thinking about maybe putting this on again one more time or two more times before I put it away. I only did one look that was like a bit interesting, and that was, sorry, I'm trying to find my pictures here. I mean, I took 4 different pictures, so I wore this a lot, and I wore it more than the pictures that I took. So I did wear, I did make sure I wore this like green shade, because you know me, I'm not a big green person. This is like an old gold green. It's like goldy green. Went really well with the sweater I was wearing, so that's why I picked it. Most of the looks that I did though were like the same thing. They were all very like neutral grays. I stuck with like these shades mostly. Kept it real boring, but I just was enjoying it. I was enjoying the looks that I was coming out of it. I did try and do sort of like some neutral shades as well. So like some of the brown shades. What else do we have here? So yeah, this is more of like, yeah, I like two looks that are like identical. Are they the same or are they different? Not quite identical, but close. So yeah, I definitely did one with, I think, again, the names on these are really dumb, but this one definitely has, oh, I know what I did with this one. So I definitely used like, I think Flirty Pop and some of these shades over here. And then I put the Danessa Myricks chrome thing that I got in my lucky bag from last year. I put that over top my eye. So that's what this look is. I was like, there was something I did with this. Something I did. That's what I did with this look. So yeah, I really enjoy this palette. And I think this palette stole the thunder from this palette. Because had I not been using this palette this month, I bet my review of this would have been more favorable. I bet you it would have been. But like I kept gravitating towards this over this. And that usually tells me something. But again, it could be just my mindset right now that I'm really wanting to wear a lot of these cool tones, and this leans a bit cooler than the other palette. I mean, there's a lot of warm tones in this too. I think that's why I like this palette. You've got a lot of variety in it. Variety is the spice of life. This is my biggest palette, I think. I think this is the one that has, I think it has 30 shades in it. And yeah, it's my biggest palette. So to sum up some of the stuff about my like roulette portion, so if you've been following this project, thank you. It's been a journey. If you haven't, there's a whole playlist. I've been going through every single one of my palettes. I started off trying to do no pan left behind, and then that quickly derailed. So I was more just trying to at least use palettes once, if not more, particularly for larger palettes. Every month, but then I did bring in 7 new palettes this year, so that again kind of derailed some stuff a little bit and made this a bit more challenging. So there were 3 palettes that I didn't use this year, which I strategically chose. This one, I actually did use this one. This is the Annabelle eye cream. This is so old. There's like 4 shades in this. I keep thinking about, like, you know, someday I should declutter this, but it's still good. I was using this as a base a few times. So I did use this, but I didn't use it formally. Like, I didn't include it as a palette in this project. The other palette that I didn't use was this one. So this is one of those Color Workshop palettes. This is a rainbow one. Again, not like, it's a palette that I'm not going to use on its own. It's a palette that I'm going to use with other palettes. I just was like, you know, if I got to cut something, it's going to be this. But I like to keep this around just to have some of those colors because I don't really have them in other palettes. Like some of these like bright blues and bright greens and this bright yellow. Don't have those in other palettes. And it's pretty much all matte except for this shade, this sort of goldy shade, and then this sort of orangey shade is a little bit not quite matte, but the rest of it I think is matte. And then the other palette, the last palette that I did not use was this guy, which you're like, there's nothing in it. Yes, there is nothing in it. This is the Natasha Denona Holiday 01 Joya palette. And I decided to like depot that or like unpalette it, and these are the shades right here. So these are the 5 shades. The particular shade that I think I will eventually get rid of is this yellow gold. I'm just not a yellow gold person. I can see myself maybe getting rid of one of these shades as well in the future. But I decided to just depot it. I did use, I think, one of these shades at one point just to like play with that shade. It's a fine, like the shadows are fine. That's why I'm not like, I don't need to declutter them. But it just is not, I mean, you can kind of tell looking at it, not really a cohesive color story. Like it's not a palette that you can really get, I guess you can get like one look out of and that's about it. It's very repetitive too, which I don't like. So I just like decided, let's just depot that and make those singles. I've decided to keep this packaging around because it is magnetic. However, I don't have, I guess I have 2, I don't know what fits in here though. Circle pans don't fit in this. I do have the Glam palette and the Retro palette. I should see if I can fit some of those in here. I think they might be the same size pans or smaller, I hope. I think they're smaller maybe. So I'm going to play with that and see if I can, you know, make some custom palettes, because that might be fun to do. So that's why I want to keep this packaging. But yeah, those were the only 3 palettes that I did not use. And so in total I used 63 palettes this year, which have a total of 677 shadows. Again, I did not use 677 shadows. I mean, that's kind of doable though. You think about it, that would be like 2 shadows per day. But yeah, I did not do that. So I did go through 63 palettes this year, which I'm super proud of. I won't be doing that next year, spoiler. Next year will be a little bit of a different project. But yeah, I really thoroughly enjoyed this. Again, most of the stuff I did last year, or this past year, 2022, was rouletting. So I was getting like surprise type palettes and maybe not using a palette in the season or the time that I was mentally wanting to use it. So that caused me some challenges, but caused me to like think of palettes in a different way. So yeah, that's it. I feel like I need to say more. There should be some sort of big hurrah, because this has been a really big project. But if I keep talking, I'm just like prolonging this video for no reason, and I could just start blabbing about eyeshadows, because I can just talk about eyeshadows. I can talk about makeup like all day long. But we should cut it off here. So yeah, I'm really happy with this project. I really enjoyed this project. It was kind of a lot, but I'm really happy to have played with all of my eyeshadows. Oh, declutters. So I do have a few declutters that are happening. Again, I guess that Joya palette is no longer a palette. It's been depotted. Another palette that's gonna get depotted is this one. One shade already fell out. This was the Blink Electric Eyes palette. It was with BoxyCharm. I see a lot of people decluttering this all the time because it's not a story. Like, you can't really wear these together, but they're really nice eyeshadows. So I am just gonna depot them, and then this palette will go away. So we're not reducing shadow numbers, but we're reducing palette numbers. These 2 palettes, so these are the Rimmel Magnify Eyes Crimson Edition and Spiced Edition. Again, talking about warm tone eyeshadows, like I'm just not a big warm tone, and both of these are like full-on warm tone stories. And I feel like there's a lot of redundancy in the colors, and there's just not a lot of shades I'm gonna use all the time. So I am gonna depot these, and I will keep some shades and declutter some shades. So yeah, these 2 palettes will no longer be palettes. I need to buy more like magnetic things because I don't have enough little like square magnetic things for these. But yeah, like I'm gonna probably keep about half of the shades in each one of them, but they're no longer gonna be palettes. And then another palette that I've been destroying, I was going to originally keep like adding shadows to this, like Franken shadowing into this, and then I decided I don't want to do that. I decided I want to start popping these shadows out and reusing the squares like as single shadows. So yeah, so I've already started depotting this. I'm not getting rid of this just yet. I still have this palette, but it's eventually, this palette will eventually go once I've kind of pulled out what I want from it, which I can see maybe pulling out these few shadows at the top, the 3 at the top, and maybe 3 more at the bottom, and then the ones in the middle I can see myself getting rid of. Like, again, the really warm tone ones, I can see myself getting rid of. So yeah, I did declutter. I actually decluttered something, guys. Sort of, barely, half decluttered. There's really only 2 palettes that I'm decluttering, and I'm only half decluttering them. Okay, it's something, guys. You gotta start somewhere. Anyway, I hope you like this video. I hope you like this series. If you did, feel free to give this video a little thumbs up down below. And if you haven't already, I would love it if you subscribe to my channel here in Toronto, Canada. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you sometime soon. Bye.